Hey guys, how's it going? It's Danconia here and welcome back to the Overwatch League Roundup. We are back to some teams that we already know now. For a few videos moving on from here, we have 4 videos coming up with teams that have already been in the Overwatch League. The first of these we're going to look at today is the Houston Outlaws. So, Houston have had an interesting off-season. Simply because their parent organisation, Optic, has had a few interesting moves. They let go of Kai. Kai, you might remember from the Dallas Fuel. He then linked up with Outlaws and has now been let go from Houston Outlaws because Optic were having some troubles and they were making some cuts. We were wondering what was going on with that, but the Outlaws are still here and they are still kicking. And they've made 2 changes to their roster. So first of all, I'm going to talk about Clockwork. Clockwork has now been moved from the Houston Outlaws. He is no longer a DPS, he is now part of their staff, a bit like the Coco situation with the Dallas Fuel. Mando Kuzai is no longer a DPS for the Houston Outlaws, he is now a content creator, and Fact Fiction, who they signed midway through the season last season, is now not at all affiliated with Houston, he's now part of the Mayhem Academy. The main tanker of the American team in the World Cup, if you remember rightly. Not this American team, the American team of 2017, because it was Muma last year. Anyway, so they brought in 2 players, and they're DPS players, and they're much needed. Arhan was brought in midway through last season, and we didn't really get to look at Arhan too closely. He is the only South Korean player on this roster, which makes a bloody change for Overwatch League teams. But he did very decently for Houston when he came in. Houston finished what? They finished 7th last season, just outside the playoffs. Houston were fairly decent all last season. They took big scalps. They were a bogey team for the London Spitfire throughout the season. They were good, especially in Stage 1, where they got to the... Did they get to the playoffs in Stage 1? I think they got to... Yeah, they came 2nd in Stage 1. Mainly off the back of Jake's Junkrat. But they are a very good team. But I think one of the best moves Houston has made so far is the fact that they have signed Dante. They've signed Dante from the San Francisco Shock. What a signing, my friends. What was Houston's biggest problem last season? They didn't have a Tracer player. And when they needed a Tracer after Stage 1, no one was playing it to a high enough level. Clockwork wasn't good enough. The rest of their team, you look at the rest of their team. Muma is a very good tank and is at the top of his game. He's playing for the American World Cup team. Cormat is a very good flex, especially D.Va. We all know about Cormat's D.Va. Linksa is a fantastic DPS. Jake is a very good DPS when he's playing what he needs to play. Like Junkrat, he is not a Tracer player. Not at any stretch of the mind. Raucous, Banny and Boink, fantastic supports. You have got a team there. And also you've got Spree, who can play the Zarya. And Spree is one of the best Zaryas in the world. So, this is a fantastic team. When you think about it on paper, you look at the players that this team has got, and you're saying, geez, that's a team. That's a team right there. That is a team to be feared. And yet, they didn't get to playoffs that season. And I think a lot of that was down to the fact that they couldn't have someone that would play the Tracer to a high level. When you look at the high up teams, they've got those Tracer players. You're looking at people like Prophet, Birdring, both of which can play Tracer for London Spitfire. You've got Sabi Olby for NYXL. You've got Carpe, more of a Widow rather than a Tracer, but he can play the Tracer very well, Carpe. I'm trying to think of more, but there are tons of Tracer players. But another thing that would benefit the Houston Outlaws at the moment is the fact that Tracer's non-existent. You've gone inside a Tracer player and Tracer's non-existent. Yeah, it's one of those things. But what I like about Dante is so damn flexible, right? He can play the Tracer, but he's also got a Sombra in his back pocket. He's got Genji in his back pocket. He can play Junkrat, but he's not going to play Junkrat because Jake's going to play Junkrat. Imagine if Jake didn't play Junkrat for the Houston Outlaws. Jeez. Oh. I think we'd all have to go and have our eyes tested. Anyway, he can also play Zarya, but Spree's going to play Zarya for Houston. That's just not going to happen. But he's very flexible. And to be quite honest, I'm not sure he'd get the game time at San Francisco anyway. Simply with the likes of Sinatra over there. Very good signing for Houston and exactly what they needed. And this gives them much more versatility in their squad. Now, obviously, we're about 2 patches away from the Overwatch League, so we don't know what's going to happen. But Tracer is slowly creeping in to the meta. Simply because Briggs has had nerfs. But something else that's creeping in is McCree. McCree is very powerful right now. In the right hands. Linksa can play a bloody good McCree, but so can Dante. So, Houston are looking good for the early signs of the Overwatch League. But they are also looking good further down the line because I see much more flexibility in this Houston squad than they had before. So, this all leads to me saying that Houston ultimately have improved on last season. They've also got a new coaching lineup with Tyrone as a head coach, Meza and Hingwoo as coaches as well. So they've got a bit of South Korean experience in there as well as the American experience. I think this Houston Outlaws team is better than last season and has a lot of potential to go on and get a playoff spot this season. We must remember that although some of the teams that are originally in the league have improved, there are more teams in total now, and there are some very good teams coming into this league. You're now looking at Hangzhou, who are looking pretty good. You're looking at Vancouver, who are looking pretty good. Toronto look decent, so do Guangzhou. The 2 perhaps below par teams are perhaps Washington and Chengdu, but again, I'll talk about Washington when we get to them. They're the last video out of all these teams, and we've already looked at Chengdu. So, I think this Houston Outlaws team are a dark horse for this season. I think they could do very well. It remains to be seen how they come into this season, because their first 3 games will give us a lot of information on how good this Houston team is. Simply because they've got to play Toronto, the newcomers into the league, then they've got to play Boston and Hangzhou. Boston I would expect this Houston team to beat, because Boston are not as good as they were last season in my opinion. Hangzhou, that should be a pretty close game. Hangzhou could edge that, but I would expect Houston to beat Toronto. So, if they can get 3 wins before in the 4th game they go against New York Excel, I think Houston are looking good for playoffs. But remember, that is very early indications. A lot can change throughout the season. As we saw, Houston looked like, not gods, but really good in the stage 1 of the Overwatch League's inaugural season and then fell off because they couldn't play Junkrat. And that is me being pretty frank, but it's true. You can argue with that. Junkrat was meta in stage 1 of Overwatch League, and you had the best Junkrat in the world. Houston had the best Junkrat in the world and still do. So if Junkrat becomes meta again, damn, if Junkrat was going to be meta for the whole Overwatch League season, I'd pick Houston to win the bloody thing. To be quite honest with you. But yeah, I think Houston are much, much better than they were last season. They've got a lot more flexibility in their squad. Their DPS lineup is right up there with the best. I think we could see Houston really push on this season and go and get a playoff spot. I don't think they'll win it though. I really don't think they'll win it. But there's definitely a playoff spot up for grabs for the Houston Outlaws this season. Go get it. Because I really think you're capable of it this season. But that rounds it up for the Houston Outlaws. Next up, I believe, we're going to look... What are we going to look at next? We're going to look at our champions next. That's London Spitfire. So that's going to be a really short video because... Can you change the perfect roster? Okay, London wasn't perfect, let's be honest, but... They won it. You can't argue with that. So, Houston Outlaws. Very good signs for the Houston Outlaws this season. But for now, thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you liked it, give it a like, subscribe if you're new, and I will see you in the next video. See you then.